One thing that it leads me into another related subject is that yes, Larry Foster certainly, his credibility and his the respect that people in that peer group had for him made it possible to recruit the kinds of members we wanted. But I think under the skin of that was the fact that even for people that didn't know very much about Arthur Page, people from other businesses, after all, he was dead for a number of years by then, clearly this is a group of public relations executives that are different from what the world may think in a very important way, because Page was the prototype, which is they were not communicators, although Page himself certainly was a good writer and communicator. He was a former journalist. But he was an advisor to management. He was a counselor. And that's the essence, for most of us, the essence of what a chief public relations officer does. And I think you were wise to see that opportunity, but I think one reason it caught on is that there is no other organization like that has a mission, which is to promote the legacy of Page and the ideas that Page installed, but also to bring back the notion of I think the word counselor is sort of pretentious, but in the senior management of a company, as well as in the nonprofit arena, you really do need someone who is paid to worry about the policies that the business adopts, the way it carries out the policies, its reputation, and that leads to integrity and a whole bunch of other things. So one subject, let
me stop you just for a minute right there, because one of the things that you've touched on, which is distinctive about the people who have positions that you and I have held, go back to the origins of the Page Society, that this is the counseling and advising role. And throughout the early days of it, your own advice and counsel and support for what we were trying to do made a difference. And that is a hard thing to describe to people, because whenever we needed to know, kind of why are we here and what are we for, you were able to provide that kind of answer and support for us, which we were able to communicate to others and prospective members or people who we wanted to join. Now the same thing, and this is what gets me, what you triggered, is that that's basically the role that we hope to have and achieve with not only our members, but for that American business can use people who have this capacity and this ability to do that very thing. At this point, it's beyond, like things that we expect in new employees or people who have their ability to communicate, to be good writers, to be good persuaders of things, to be energetic and to know what's going on around them and be perceptive. You reach a certain point where those kind of talents and abilities are just expected as you move up the corporate ladder, so to speak. When you get to that senior level, your ability to write and communicate and think and that sort of thing is sort of expected. But it's what you have to offer, the advice and counsel that you have to offer when the corporation is confronted with a problem, or the CEO is confronted with a problem, is what makes the difference. And that's basically what the Page Society is trying to do. And I have to say that's what Page is, why he's such a perfect role model for all of us to have, in which I think that we've been blessed by being able to extend it through the Page Society into the world today. And you're putting your finger on the exact key for what a lot of American businesses need.
While you're thinking about the answer to the next question, which is not only what the heck is counseling, but how do you do it, I wanted to offer a page quote, or at least a paraphrase in one of his speeches to I don't know whether it was a Bell audience or a corporate or business audience, but he was trying to explain what this counselor does, what this chief public relations officer is supposed to be doing. And so he used a metaphor. He said that job is like the officer that stands on the bridge of a very large ship, stands next to the captain who is commanding the ship and running the ship. And that officer's job is to look out at the weather and see if there are threats out there, to see traffic in the harbor, and I'll see opportunities and convey those to the captain, who is busy, saying, full astern or whatever captains say, and there needs to be somebody else there who's looking out ahead at the weather and blah blah blah. I've thought about that from the time I read that speech, because I thought that audience probably said, what kind of madman is this guy Page? But for those of us who have done it, it's a pretty apt
it's
metaphor,
a perfect.
I think. But how do you do it?
Well,
We're not meteorologists.
No, it's a perfect metaphor for what we're talking about, because that's as a counselor, you need to have information that's accurate, information that you can bring to the table in order to present a case. It cannot be emotional, last-minute type thinking. It needs to be rational. So you need, and we talked about the value of surveys, customer surveys, to help run the business successfully. Well, the same thing is true when you're in this position and you're standing next to the captain, or in that area. You really are like a periscope or a radar unit that keeps looking 360 degrees around the business at all times to see what's going on with all the various public and constituencies that you deal with, to see if there's likely to be problems, or where things are happening that are good, where things are going that may be a little iffy, and where things really need some attention. Then, as a counselor, it's not your role to go in and tell the CEO, we got a problem over here, you got to get that fixed. He doesn't want to hear that, or she doesn't want to hear that. They want you to come in and you say, we got a problem over here, and here's what I do about it, or here's what you may want to do about it, or something of that nature. That's what counseling is you go to the doctor and you tell them what the problem is. You expect them to tell you, well, that's just what you do. You expect him to give you some kind of an answer. And that's what I think most of us, that our jobs are like. So to me, and this is contrary, I'm in dangerous water here in the journalism school saying this, that to me, to achieve this type of value within a corporation or within an organization requires that the person be a broad gauge type person with a wide range of interests. It's nice to be able to write a news release, or to be able to write some ad copy or some slogans, or to write a quick TV blurb, or to write this sort of thing and that. That's all stuff that when you're at this point, we all did plenty of that at one point in time in our career. But at this point, what's important is the advice and counsel that you can give based on your experience and your knowledge of what's going on. And frequently, that really requires the person be well-read, that they know what's going on. I prefer, personally, people that have some form of a liberal arts background, or at least some exposure to it, so that they're used to thinking about things. If they have a degree in philosophy, that's never bothered me, because what you're really looking for are people who can think, who have ideas, who are creative, who are innovative. You don't want somebody who's waiting to hear what you're going to say and writes it down and comes back to your office 10 minutes later and says, well, I think this is what you ought to do. It's crazy. But that scene, I've seen that repeated dozens and dozens of times where somebody's waiting, and this is even at the most senior levels, waiting for the CEO to make some kind of a statement, whether it's good or bad or whatever. And the minute that he says this, somebody will say, gee, that sounds like a great idea. It may be the dumbest idea in the world, but the majority of people are not interested in challenging the CEO.
And I think we'll leave it at that on this question, because I can tell you what happens to the senior public relations executive who says, boss, you had a great idea. 9 times out of 10, the boss knows he or she did not have a great idea, is looking for a great idea, and that's probably the last conversation that's ever going to occur between those two, because the boss is going to say, go back and write me a press release, and don't call me, I'll call you.
Don't get caught writing press releases at that level.